Do you know which hero in Greek mythology was punished by the gods with 12 impossible trials? A hero who fought and killed an invincible lion, faced a serpent with many heads, and achieved feats so extraordinary that they still leave us in awe today. But the question is, why was Hercules forced to endure such a punishment? What secrets lay behind these 12 labors? And could any mortal truly survive such impossible challenges? Tonight, we'll journey into a tale of strength, sacrifice, and relentless struggle, the legendary story of the 12 labors of Hercules. So, are you ready to discover who compelled Hercules to accept the most dangerous and grueling tasks of his life, and whether he truly triumphed in the end? And before we begin, if you enjoy mysterious journeys into history and mythology, we kindly invite you to subscribe to our channel so you never miss an adventure. Also, drop a comment below with your country, your city, and the current local time where you are watching from. It's always a joy to see which corners of the world our stories are reaching. Imagine being born with the blood of gods in your veins. Imagine being stronger than any man alive, yet carrying a curse so heavy that even your greatest victories came wrapped in pain. This is the story of Hercules. But here's the mystery. How did the mightiest hero of Greek mythology, the son of Zeus himself, end up chained to suffering? Why did the gods, who should have honored him, instead condemn him to trials no human could hope to survive? This tale does not begin with triumph. It begins with a curse. Hercules was the child of Zeus, but also the living reminder of Zeus's betrayal to his wife, Hera. And Hera never forgave him. Her hatred was relentless. It didn't matter what Hercules achieved, who he saved, or how noble his deeds. To Hera, he was nothing but proof of Zeus's unfaithfulness. So she waited, plotting in silence until the moment came. When Hercules should have been celebrated for his heroism, Hera clouded his mind with madness. And in that madness, he committed the unthinkable. He killed his own wife and children. Pause for a moment. Can you imagine waking from that nightmare only to find it was real? To realize that your hands, your strength, had destroyed the very family you loved? For Hercules, the grief was unbearable. Seeking redemption, he turned to the gods. But the gods do not forgive easily. The oracle at Delphi delivered his fate. Hercules must serve King Eurystheus and complete 12 impossible tasks. If he succeeded, perhaps his soul could be cleansed. If he failed, his name would be lost in eternal shame. But here's the question. Were these truly trials of redemption? Or were they simply another cruel trick by Hera, designed to break him once and for all? And so began the 12 labors of Hercules. The first task was to slay the Nemean lion. But this was no ordinary beast. His golden hide was impenetrable, invincible. No arrow could pierce it, no blade could cut it, and its roar shook the earth itself. Imagine facing an enemy that no weapon could wound. Hercules entered the caves of Nemean, arrows ready, sword in hand. But each strike failed. Arrows bounced harmlessly off its skin. His sword shattered against its hide. So how do you kill something that cannot be harmed? Hercules watched. He waited. He trapped the beast in its cave, cutting off its escape. And then, using nothing but his own raw strength, he wrestled the lion with his bare hands. In a brutal struggle of man against monster, he strangled it to death. But Hercules did more than survive. He adapted, using the lion's own claws, the only things sharp enough to cut its skin. He stripped its hide and wore it as armor. That lion's skin, draped across his shoulders, would forever symbolize his power. Yet this was only the beginning. The second labor, the Lernaean Hydra. The second task made the lion look almost simple. The Hydra was a serpent born of nightmares, 9 venomous heads snapping and hissing. But worse still, for every head Hercules cut off, 2 more grew back in its place. How do you fight a monster that multiplies every time you strike? Hercules marched into the swamps of Lerna, the air thick with decay. With each blow of his sword, the Hydra grew stronger, more terrifying. The battle seemed endless, hopeless. With the help of his nephew, Iolaus, he devised a strategy. Each time he severed a head, Iolaus seared the wound with fire, preventing new ones from growing. Slowly, the monster weakened. One by one, the heads fell until only the immortal head remained. Hercules crushed it beneath a massive stone, burying it for eternity. From its blood, he dipped his arrows in poison so deadly that even the gods would come to fear them. 2 labors completed, 10 more to go. But let me ask you this, was Hercules becoming a hero, or merely a pawn in a cruel game played by gods? Each victory gave him power, yes. The lion's pelt, the poisoned arrows, symbols of triumph. But weren't they also trophies of curses, born from beasts created to destroy him? And this is why the story of Hercules still grips us. Because it's not just about strength. It's about the battle between punishment and redemption, between destiny and free will. These first labors were only the beginning. Ahead lay trials that would push Hercules far beyond the limits of mortal men, capturing monsters from the ends of the earth, cleansing filth that had gathered for centuries, even venturing to face death itself. But the question still lingers. Did Hercules ever truly earn forgiveness? Or was he doomed to suffer forever, no matter how many victories he claimed? The answer lies in the rest of the 12 labor. Have you ever wondered what it truly means to suffer for redemption? What if every step forward in your journey only brought a darker, more impossible challenge waiting just ahead? That is the curse and the destiny of Hercules. In our last story, we saw him defeat the Nemean lion with his bare hands and conquer the Hydra whose heads refused to die. But those were only the opening notes of a symphony of torment. The gods had much more in store, and Hera's hatred was far from satisfied. The question is, could any mortal survive what came next? At first glance, this task may not sound terrifying. Hercules was told to capture the Lernaean Hind, a sacred deer with golden antlers and hooves of bronze. It wasn't a beast of destruction, nor a monster with fangs and venom. But here's the trick. It belonged to Artemis, the goddess of the hunt, and anyone who harmed her sacred creature risked her eternal wrath. The hind was swift, faster than any arrow. For a full year, Hercules pursued it across forests, rivers, and mountains. Imagine the frustration of chasing something so delicate, so elusive, yet knowing that even a scratch could bring divine punishment. At last, Hercules cornered it. Some say he used nets. Others say he shot an arrow that merely stunned it. However it happened, he carried the deer alive to King Eurystheus. But the message was clear. These were not just tests of strength. They were trials of patience, endurance, and respect for the gods themselves. Next came a beast of pure savagery, the Erymanthian boar. Massive, tusked, and enraged, this monster ravaged villages, tearing apart farmland and terrorizing anyone who crossed its path. Hercules tracked it into the snowy mountains. The battle was not only against the beast but also against the icy wilderness. The boar charged, its tusks glinting like blades. But Hercules was cunning. He drove it into the deep snow, where its movements slowed, and with sheer strength he subdued it alive. Dragging the creature back, Hercules displayed his triumph. But King Eurystheus was so terrified by the sight of the beast that he hid inside a large bronze jar. A king trembling like a child, and Hercules, the so-called criminal, standing victorious, who then was truly the stronger. But not all challenges came in the form of beasts. Some were designed to humiliate. Hercules was commanded to clean the Augean stables in a single day. Now, this may sound simple, until you realize the stables held thousands of cattle and had not been cleaned for 30 years. The filth was unimaginable. This was no labor of glory. It was a labor of disgrace. A hero reduced to a stable boy, but Hercules was clever. He diverted the course of 2 rivers, sending their raging waters crashing through the stables, washing away decades of filth in a single sweep. And here's where the story twists. Instead of honoring him, King Eurystheus refused to count this labor, claiming Hercules had cheated. It raises a question. What chance did Hercules ever truly have? If even brilliance was dismissed, was the game rigged from the very start? The next trial took him deep into the marshes of Arcadia. There, flocks of monstrous birds with bronze beaks and metallic feathers darkened the skies. These were no ordinary creatures. Their feathers could be hurled like daggers, piercing flesh and armor alike. Hercules stood surrounded, thousands of wings beating, screeching, raining death from above. How could one man fight an army of the skies? The gods intervened. Athena gave Hercules a rattle forged by Hephaestus. With it, he created a deafening sound that startled the birds into the air. As they fled, Hercules shot them down with his poisoned arrows. But again, was this victory his, or was he merely surviving because the gods chose this time to give him tools? By now, Hercules had completed 6 labors, halfway through his torment. But ask yourself, was he becoming redeemed? Or was he sinking deeper into a cycle designed to keep him chained to punishment? Every beast slain, every challenge conquered, every humiliation endured. And still Eurystheus sneered, Hera plotted, and the gods looked on with cold indifference. Think about it, what does it mean to win when the rules are written so you can never truly succeed? Hercules carried the weight of his curse like Atlas carried the heavens. Each labor, each impossible task, stripped away not his strength but his spirit. And yet he endured. But endurance comes at a cost. How much suffering can one soul carry before redemption becomes nothing but another cruel illusion? These 6 labors tested his body, his wit, and his pride. But the greatest challenges still lay ahead. Monsters more terrifying, tasks more degrading, journeys into realms no mortal was meant to survive. And so we ask, was Hercules on the path to glory, or was he being destroyed piece by piece by the very gods who created his destiny? Have you ever reached a point where every victory feels meaningless because a harder trial always follows? That was the reality for Hercules. He had conquered lions, hydras, and even the filth of stables that mocked his glory. But the gods were not finished. His punishment, his curse, demanded more, and so began the next stage of his torment. Trials not only of strength, but of cunning, endurance, and the will to stand against creatures that should never have existed. The island of Crete, a land known for beauty, but also for monsters. It was here that a mighty bull had been unleashed, wild, savage, unstoppable. Some say it was the same bull that carried Europa across the sea. Others claim it was the father of the Minotaur. Whatever its origin, its destruction was legendary. Fields burned beneath its hooves. Villages trembled at its charge. Hercules was sent to capture it alive. Alive, not slain. Imagine facing such a beast. Its eyes glowing with fury, its nostrils spitting smoke like fire. To kill it would have been one thing. To restrain it, something else entirely. They say Hercules fought it for hours, his massive arms locking around the creature's neck as it thrashed and bellowed. Dust filled the air, hooves shattered stone, yet he did not let go. In the end, his will outlasted its rage. With sheer strength, he wrestled the beast to the ground, dragged it across the sea, and presented it to Eurystheus. But was this truly a triumph? Or yet another reminder that his punishments were endless, and his victories belonged not to him, but to the king who mocked him? If the bull was terrifying, this next task was worse, because it revealed the darkness not only of beasts but of men. King Diomedes of Thrace owned a herd of horses unlike any other. These mares were not gentle creatures of pasture and field. They were flesh-eaters, fed not on grain, but on the flesh of men. Hercules was ordered to steal them. But how do you steal what should never exist? These were no ordinary animals. They were weapons of terror, kept by a cruel king who reveled in their horror. Accounts differ on what happened next. Some say Hercules killed Diomedes and fed his body to the very creatures he once commanded. Others claim he tamed the mares by force, breaking their unnatural hunger. Whatever the truth, the mares were brought back to Eurystheus. But think about it. What kind of gods create trials where the monsters are not only beasts, but reflections of humanity's own cruelty? Was this punishment really about atonement, or was it a mirror showing Hercules the darkest parts of existence? Now came a trial unlike any before, not of monsters, not of filth, not of brute strength. This time, Hercules was commanded to bring back the belt of Hippolyta, queen of the Amazons. The Amazons, a nation of warrior women, unmatched in battle, daughters of Ares himself. They lived by their own laws, beyond the reach of kings and empires. Their queen's girdle was more than an ornament. It was a symbol of her divine authority. At first, the story seems almost peaceful. When Hercules arrived, Hippolyta herself welcomed him. She admired his courage, his strength, and perhaps even his suffering. She was willing to give him the girdle willingly. But Hera, ever watchful, ever vengeful, could not allow such mercy. She spread rumors among the Amazons that Hercules had come not as a guest, but as a conqueror, that he would enslave their queen and steal their freedom. The result? A war. Amazon warriors stormed the beaches, their arrows darkening the sky, their blades flashing like lightning. Hercules fought his way through chaos, torn between his mission and the injustice of fighting those who had shown him kindness. In the end, Hippolyta was slain and her girdle taken. But was this a victory or a tragedy? Was Hercules redeeming himself, or was he being turned into the very thing Hera wanted the world to see? A destroyer, not a savior. The shadow behind the trials. By now, Hercules had completed 9 labors. 9 impossible challenges, each one designed not only to test him, but to break him. And yet, ask yourself, had he grown stronger? Or had he been stripped of his humanity piece by piece? The bull, the mares, the Amazons, each task was not just a battle, but a moral wound. To kill when you do not wish to kill. to conquer when peace might have been possible, to destroy what should have been spared. Hercules was becoming something more than human, but also perhaps something less. At this point in the journey we must pause. What is the true cost of heroism? Is it glory, to be sung in stories for thousands of years? Or is it endless suffering, written in blood, sweat, and the cries of the innocent caught in the crossfire? Hercules endured because he had no choice, but each labor left a scar that strength could not heal. And still there were 3 more labors to come. 3 challenges greater than anything he had faced before. So we must ask ourselves, was Hercules marching toward redemption or toward destruction? 9 trials had scarred Hercules, but the gods were not done with him. His strength had been tested, his endurance stretched to breaking, and his soul pushed to the edge of despair. Yet still 3 labors remained, and these were not ordinary tasks. They were designed to push him past human limits, to break not just his body, but his very spirit. Far to the west, beyond lands known to men, there lived a giant named Geryon. 3 bodies, 3 heads, 1 monstrous being. He ruled an island at the edge of the world, where crimson cattle grazed, sacred, beautiful, and guarded by terrors. Hercules was tasked to bring them back. But how do you reach the edge of the world? Some stories say the sun itself gave Hercules a golden cup, carrying him across the ocean. Imagine that for a moment. The strongest of mortals, sailing inside a vessel of pure light, toward a land no man was meant to see. And when he arrived, the island was death itself. Guard dogs with fangs sharper than blades, a herdsman whose eyes glowed with fire, and then Geryon. 3 torsos, 3 sets of arms, 3 heads glaring at Hercules with hatred. 1 man facing a giant that was 3 men in one. The clash shook the island. Spears shattered. Arrows flew. In the end, Hercules' bow found its mark. Geryon fell, his 3 heads silenced forever. The cattle were seized, their crimson hides glowing like embers beneath the sun. But again, ask yourself, was this victory or theft? Did Hercules triumph, or did he become another conqueror, stealing life from those who stood in his way? The 11th labor, the golden apples of the Hesperides. Now came a task wrapped in mystery. The king demanded the golden apples of the Hesperides, fruits from the sacred garden of Hera herself, apples of immortality, guarded by nymphs and by a serpent that never slept. This was no mere test of strength. This was temptation itself. Hercules wandered for days, perhaps months, seeking the hidden garden. He crossed deserts, climbed mountains, even wrestled with the river god himself for guidance. But the way to the apples was not one he could find alone. And so, his journey led him to Atlas, the titan condemned to hold the heavens on his shoulders. Imagine that, a being so ancient, so broken by punishment, yet still forced to carry the weight of the skies. Hercules struck a bargain. He would take the heavens upon his shoulders, if Atlas would fetch the apples. And so it was. For a time, Hercules held up the sky. Think about that. Not a metaphor, not a symbol, but the very vault of the heavens pressing down upon him. A burden no mortal could survive. When Atlas returned, holding the golden apples in his hands, he laughed. Why should he take back the heavens when he could finally be free? Why not let Hercules suffer for eternity? But Hercules was cunning. He agreed, asking only that Atlas briefly hold the heavens so he could adjust his cloak for comfort. The Titan, perhaps too eager, obliged, and the moment Atlas took back the burden, Hercules walked away, apples in hand. Strength had won him many victories, but here, for once, it was wit that saved him. Finally, the last trial, the most impossible of all. Hercules was commanded to descend into the underworld itself and bring back Cerberus, the hound of Hades, a beast with 3 heads, a serpent's tail, and a hunger for souls. This was no longer a battle of flesh and blood. This was a descent into death. Hercules sought permission from Hades, lord of the underworld. Hades agreed, but on one condition: Cerberus could not be harmed. If Hercules wanted to take the beast, he must subdue it by strength alone. And so he stood at the gates of death, staring into 3 sets of eyes that burned like fire. The hound lunged, its jaws snapping like thunder, its body thrashing with the power of a storm. Hercules wrapped his arms around it, forcing its head back, muscles trembling, veins straining. Every ounce of strength poured into the struggle. Minutes felt like hours, hours like eternity. But Hercules did not release his grip. Slowly, unbelievably, the beast weakened. Cerberus submitted, dragging the monstrous hound back to the world of the living. Hercules had completed his 12th and final labor. The legacy of the labors: 12 trials, 12 impossible tasks. He had conquered beasts, outwitted titans, even stood against death itself. Yet in the end, the question lingers: was Hercules truly redeemed? Or was he merely broken into the shape the gods demanded? The labors were meant as punishment, but they forged a legend. A man who bore burdens beyond imagining, who lived not for himself but as a pawn in the games of gods. And still his name endures, not just as a warrior, but as a symbol of resilience, of how suffering can forge greatness, of how even when the gods themselves conspire against you, the human spirit, scarred though it may be, can endure. The eternal question for us, as you close your eyes tonight and let this story drift through your dreams, consider this: what makes a hero? Is it victory over monsters? Or is it survival through suffering? For Hercules, every labor was a reminder that life itself is trial. And yet, we remember him not for his pain, but for his endurance, for the unshakable truth that even the strongest are tested, and that true strength is to keep going when every force in the world tells you to stop. And with that, the 12 labors of Hercules are complete. His story does not end here, but his legend, his struggle, has echoed for thousands of years. If you've enjoyed this journey into the heart of Greek mythology, we kindly invite you to subscribe to our channel so you never miss the stories that connect us to the ancient world. And before you go, leave us a comment with your city and the current time where you're watching from. We love seeing how these stories reach across time and space to connect us all. Good night, and may your dreams be filled with strength, resilience, and the courage of Hercules.